This section of Introduction to Wolfram Notebooks is about using notebooks on different platforms, especially in the cloud and on mobile devices like tablets and smartphones. For example, here is a notebook shown on a tablet computer and displayed using the free Wolfram Player app. With this app, you can scroll through the notebook and open and close cells by double tapping on cell grouping brackets, much as in Wolfram Desktop. And the notebook can also be a dynamic document. So for example, you can adjust the controls of dynamic content like the buttons and the slider in this manipulate result. The interactive controls in the Wolfram Player app are shown at the bottom of the screen, which is done because the controls on a mobile device are typically manipulated using finger taps rather than with a mouse, and fingers can block the display, so having the controls at the bottom of the screen can make it easier to see the display and operate the controls at the same time. To create or edit a notebook, instead of Wolfram Player, you can use the Wolfram Cloud app. For example, this shows that same notebook in the Wolfram Cloud app, which includes controls for editing the notebook. Those controls are used here for inserting a new text cell. Editing will be described in more detail in a moment. The Wolfram Player and the Wolfram Cloud apps also work on smartphones. Here, for example, is that notebook on a smartphone using the Wolfram Player app. Except for the size of the screen, the display works much as it does on the tablet, including dynamic content like buttons and sliders. Notebooks can also be displayed and edited in a web browser on any computer that is connected to the internet or to a suitable cloud. For example, this shows that notebook in a web browser on a desktop computer through a web page that is logged into a free Wolfram Cloud account. Interactive controls work here as well, and the notebook can be edited, such as adding a new text cell, and you can do calculations. And of course, the notebook can also be shown in an ordinary desktop application. This, for example, shows that notebook on a desktop computer running Wolfram Desktop. The underlying notebook file is the same on all of these platforms, on a mobile device or in a web browser or on the desktop, and the same notebook can be opened in any platform. For example, starting with this notebook on the desktop, you can choose Save to Cloud to save the notebook in a cloud account. If the desktop application is not already signed in to a Wolfram Cloud account, you will be asked to sign in, and after that you can choose a name for saving the notebook in that account. The notebook in the cloud can be opened in any of these platforms. For example, returning to the tablet after installing the Wolfram Player app, you can launch the app, which shows the notebooks that are saved on this device, but to see the notebook that was just uploaded to the cloud, you can tap the button in the upper left corner of the screen to open a side panel, tap Add Cloud Account, and use the dialog box to log into that cloud account. The notebook that was just saved to the cloud was saved in the home directory of that account, so navigate to that directory and open the notebook. There are buttons in the upper right corner of this window for various operations with this notebook. Tapping the button with letters on it opens a small dialog box that is used here to make the display a little bit bigger, which results in the display that was shown earlier. This notebook currently exists in the cloud, but you can also save the notebook locally on this tablet computer by tapping this button in the upper right corner of the window, which opens a dialog box with various choices. To save the notebook on this tablet, tap Save to Files, which opens a dialog box for choosing where to save the notebook. With the notebook saved on this tablet, you could sign out of the cloud account and even disconnect from the internet and still view the notebook. The basic programs for interacting with this notebook are all running locally on this tablet, which makes these operations significantly faster since it avoids the overhead of running over the internet, and dynamic content like buttons and sliders will also work. Working without being connected to the internet, of course, requires that nothing in these operations either directly or indirectly tries to access the internet. In this particular notebook, the earthquake data, for example, has to be included in the notebook. To edit the notebook, still on the tablet, you can start by launching the Wolfram Cloud app. After logging into the account, you can tap to open the notebook. The display includes the same font magnification button as the Wolfram Player app. Editing the notebook to insert a new cell starts much as it does on the desktop by clicking, or in this case, tapping to get a cell insertion bar, which also brings up a row of buttons at the bottom of the screen. To enter a calculation, tap the Input Cell button, which creates a new input cell and also brings up a special keyboard for entering input. You can use the keyboard to enter the input and then tap the Evaluate button to do the calculation. To get a text cell, tap the New Cell button and choose Plain Text, which creates a text cell and opens a keyboard for entering the contents of the cell. Other types of cells can be entered by choosing Styled Text from the New Cell menu. For example, you can choose Section to get a section cell and then enter the contents of the cell. Selecting cell brackets brings up a different row of buttons for copying or pasting or cutting cells. For example, this shows using the Cut button to delete the cells that were just entered. Finally, as was shown earlier, Wolfram Notebooks can also be edited using a web browser. You can start at the Wolfram Cloud website, log into your Wolfram Cloud account, and navigate to the notebook that you want to edit. Here you can enter calculations by clicking in the notebook to get a cell insertion bar, enter the calculation using the keyboard, and press Shift-Enter to do the calculation. Many features of Wolfram Desktop are also available here, including, for example, the suggestions bar below the output. Keyboard shortcuts can be used for choosing new cell styles. For example, you can type the keyboard shortcut for a new text cell and enter the contents of the cell. Another way of choosing the style of a new cell is to click the Format button at the top of the window, which opens a side panel with controls for choosing fonts and cell styles and so on. For example, to get a section cell, you can choose Section from the Cell Style menu and enter the contents of the cell. For just getting started with Wolfram Notebooks, Wolfram Cloud is in some ways the easiest place to begin because usually there's nothing to install. All you need is a web browser on a computer connected to the internet. For example, you can open a web browser and go to the Wolfram webpage, www.wolfram.com, which shows the whole range of products. One of those products is Wolfram Programming Lab, which is a good place for learning the Wolfram language. Choosing Wolfram Programming Lab opens a notebook with some sample Wolfram language programs, but to just get a new notebook, you can click the Create a New Notebook button or choose New Notebook from the File menu to get a new notebook in the Wolfram Cloud Open Access system where you can enter content and do calculations much as you might do in any other Wolfram notebook. After creating the notebook, you can save the notebook in the cloud, which would of course require logging into a cloud account, or you can choose Download from the File menu to download the notebook to a desktop system. That's the end of the examples for this section. The basic features of Wolfram Notebooks work much the same across all of these platforms, but for features that are different on different platforms, a good place to look for more information is the workflow guides in the Wolfram documentation, which gives separate step-by-step instructions for each platform. For example, here is a page of workflow guides on working in notebooks, and in this page on creating a text cell, you can choose instructions for the desktop platform or for Wolfram Cloud, or for mobile devices like tablets and smartphones.